Try that again. I forgot to unmute myself. Welcome everyone to our fourth virtual Friday morning business breakfast talk in our ongoing virtual event series, Nexicom Presents Fourth Line Theater at Home. These sessions provide an opportunity to get to know local political and business leaders and the inner workings of their sector. I'm so excited to spend some time today with Andrew Pyle, but before I do, I just have a few housekeeping notes. First off, I want to acknowledge our amazing longtime sponsors at Fourth Line Theater, Nexicom, for their continued support and innovative approach to sponsorship during these unprecedented times. I'd also like to acknowledge Exit Realty LiftLock, our major sponsor. Thank you. Just another housekeeping note, I want to let you know that all of your audio is muted. So if you'd like to submit a question to Andrew, we'd be happy to answer the question during our Q&A after the talk. To ask a question, simply click the Q&A button on the menu at the bottom of your Zoom video window. You can type questions and then Lindy will collect them and give them to Andrew during the Q&A. Also be aware if you mistakenly exit the webinar or have any technical difficulties, you can re-enter by clicking the Zoom link that we sent you earlier today via email. So get back in the same way you arrived. Be sure to follow our social media, eBlast, visit our website to register for our upcoming events. You can also visit Fourth Line Theater's YouTube channel to view all of our virtual events after the presentation. I'm out at the farm today, and from now until 12 o'clock, we have our farmer's market on. So without further ado, and because he's probably one of the busiest people in Peterborough, I'd like to introduce and welcome Andrew Pyle. Good morning.
Good morning, Kim.
How are you?
We're doing great. Thank you.
Good. Thank you so much for joining me. My first thing is I want to say full disclosure, Andrew is a longtime board member at Fourth Line Theater, and we're so lucky to have you as a member of our board.
Thank you so much, Kim.
I want to ask you, my first question is, are you originally from Peterborough, Andrew?
No, I'm not. I'm actually from Toronto, born and raised in Toronto, educated in Toronto, and then moved up to the Peterborough area back in 2002. So it feels like a long time, but a lot of people ask me, like, whereabouts in Peterborough are you from? But I'm from good old-fashioned downtown Scarborough in the GTA.
Oh, I just spent 19 years. We just moved back to Peterborough from 19 years in Scarborough.
There we go.
That's right. I know you went to U of T and graduated from U of T. So I'm curious in terms of your work. Well, first of all, I'll ask you, could you describe what your title is and what your business is in a nutshell? And then I want to unpack that a bit.
Yeah, so in a nutshell, Kim, I'm a financial advisor and also a portfolio manager. So what we do is we do financial planning, we manage portfolios for individuals, not just in Peterborough, but we also do that for people across Canada. So basically is a wealth management business that we run here in Peterborough. It's interesting, I had a chat with someone the other day and they're talking about how my kids used to interact with me when they were younger. Daddy would come home, Daddy, what do you do at work? And the only way I could actually describe what I did was just to say, I tell stories. And that job description applied in my old life as an economist on Bay Street and to what I do now. And it basically is trying to put the world in some sense of order for people. And then you do that through stories.
And is it in the family, your mother, your father, were they involved in the financial sector, Andrew?
No, not at all. So Dad was a postman back in England and they came to Canada back in the 1950s. And because of a lack of work back then, Dad actually became a butcher. And believe it or not, that was my part-time job in high school and paid my way through university. So no, the family was never in finance. And to be truthfully honest, Kim, because people always ask me, like, did you always know that you were going to be a financial advisor? The same question applies to, did you always know you were going to be an economist? And the answer is absolutely no. I wanted to be a pilot, believe it or not, and actually went to flight school before I went into economics. So Yeah, there was nothing in the family, nor nothing even in the inkling that I had in high school that this is exactly what I wanted to do.
Wow. Where was your dad's butcher shop?
Dad used to work. So for those on this call that are of our age group, Kim, or older, they'll remember the name Dominion Stores. So Dad used to be a meat cutter for the Dominion Stores in Toronto, and then finished his career just before he passed away at IGA down on the beaches. So there's a beautiful little IGA store on Queen Street down on the beaches, and that's where Dad basically ended up, and that's where I used to work. Actually, used to drive my bike to that little store in the beaches before the $1 million homes, and that's where my part-time job was.
That's amazing. I know that IGA well, have been there many times. It's right across from my chapters that I would go to when I lived in
Exactly.
that hood for so long, or Coles, I guess it is. So did you go to U of T to study business and economics?
Well, it's interesting, Kim. When I went to flight school, and some of the viewers today may be acquainted with Seneca College. Now, it's an interesting story for me, at least, because Seneca College is where you went to school to become a commercial airline pilot in Toronto. Very competitive program. Not everyone got through it. Out of 700 people, they basically picked about 30 people. Seneca College Flight School was run out of Seneca College in Toronto and Buttonville Airport. For those of you that have gone out to the Peterborough Airport recently, you will notice that there is a Seneca College there. Well, that is the exact same Seneca College Flight School that I went to that they've now transplanted to Peterborough, which is amazing for Peterborough. But long story short, Kim, I didn't make it through flight school. And, back in 1983, at the age of 19, it was, what do you do? And of course, back then, as you remember, Kim, it was all about, got to get into computers because computers are the future. So I actually started University of Toronto taking maths and sciences and computer science, and I took one economics course, and I fell in love with it, and went on to get my graduate degree in economics in 1988. So for those, again, that say, like, how did you know you wanted to be an economist? I simply did not know. I just fell into it because it was something that became a passion of mine.
And how does it become a passion? Like, how do you become? I'm thinking about my first year macro and microeconomics courses that I could barely get through. So did you just like whiz through those? And was there a moment or a pivotal moment where you were like, I think I'm good at understanding
Mhm.
this?
Yeah, kind of like that. It's almost like think of a pool table, Kim, where you got a whole bunch of balls and they're all different sizes, but only one ball is going to fall through that one hole that's the right size. And I think that applies to all of us that go into education and try to find ourselves. What is it that makes us tick? So for me, economics and the study of economics really was a thing that it wasn't just easy. It was enjoyable, and it helped me put order to the world, and many facets of economics. For those that are watching that have had gone to economics school, there's all different branches of economics, but at the end of the day, the discipline really does bring meaning to everything that we do every day. I think that's what really appealed to me, and it became a passion, so much so that I went and got my master's degree, and have been studying and practicing economics ever since.
So explain economics to me. Can you explain it to a layperson?
Economics really, for me, is kind of the analysis and study of everything that makes up an economy, Kim. From what we do every day in terms of our individual spending. Why do we spend on certain goods? What determines what we can spend? How much we earning on our job? How confident do we feel? So there's a field in economics, behavioral economics, that really gets to the core of the psychology around spending, the psychology around what consumers and businesses do. And it goes all the way from that level, Kim, all the way to global economics, trading between countries, geopolitics. And so it runs the full gambit, and it really is kind of the study of what makes the economy, whether it's you and me, Kim, because we're our own individual microeconomy, our family is a microeconomy, Peterborough, the city, is a microeconomy, and it just keeps building from there. But the analysis ties all of that together.
It's gargantuan. Like that is a gargantuan thing you've just described. How does someone like you in your early days as an economist, and I know you were working for banks and I'm sure you've worked with governments as well. How do you look at world economics then the economics of the big superpowers, the economics of Canada. Like, how do you look at a topic that huge?
You look at it day by day, Kim, and it's, I've had people stop me and say, like, I don't understand, you can shift from topic to topic and talk about it and try to explain things like what is happening with respect to China and the States, and then flip into talking about what is happening here at home with fiscal spending, like, our deficits and that. And what I tell them is it really is like every other job that you can think of, where it's just day by day that you spend immersed in that field. Uh, and it starts to become not habit, but you don't always have to open a book to understand what's happening between the countries. A doctor operating on you doesn't have his textbooks in the operating room. You do it long enough that you know what you're doing. You know how to do it. What is wonderful about this discipline, though, Kim, it changes every day. It never becomes boring. It's not static. We don't know anything what's going to happen tomorrow. And I think that's what makes it so exciting as economists to say, I kind of understand how things work today, and I kind of understand the models that we've created. But the world changes. And the reason it changes is because people change. We're evolving and we make up the economy. So therefore, the world economy is always going to change. And it's riveting. I know we've been through a very traumatic time right now, Kim, with the pandemic. Many people, watching this morning have been impacted to some degree, and have felt that anxiety. And so to say that this is exciting doesn't really resonate that well in this current environment. But at some point, we will look back on these moments that we have gone through, and they will form a learning experience for us, and actually will help economists, in the future. Students that are going to study economists now and become economists like me and Ali, 5 years from now, they'll look back at this, and this will be instructional for them. So those things are intriguing to me.
So you were working as an economist. You were at the name of the Dutch bank. You were at ABN AMRO. Is that how you say it?
Yeah, I mean, they're not really around now, but at the time they were probably one of the top 10 banks in the world. Extremely large global bank, offices all around the world, and that was a bank that I joined, basically looking to be what we call a financial economist. And I'll go back a little bit, Kim, because my very first job, and you know, being a student at the University of Toronto back in 1988 was not an easy thing. There wasn't a lot of jobs. So people think that, oh, you get your degree, you come out, you get a job, and everything's fine. It was far from that. So my first job was actually a 3-month contract, believe it or not, with the province of Ontario. I worked for the finance department in Ontario for 3 months, and I was gracious for it. I then went to Toronto Dominion Bank, worked as an economist there for a number of years. But I had this desire to work in the financial community. And so working as a bank economist may sound great, but you're basically sitting there just doing forecasts every day. I really wanted to be in the thick things. I wanted to be on a trading desk. I wanted to see and feel the financial markets and apply what I learned to that. So I actually joined a company that I guarantee no one on this call will know. And they were called MMS International. It was called Money Market Services International. And it was the very first firm on the planet that provided instant real-time analysis of anything that happened in the world to trading desks around the world. So my job, Kim, believe it or not, was sitting in front of a computer, actually multiple computers. And as things happen in the world, we responded to those in real time. So to put some perspective around this was 1991. This was before the internet, before we became high frequency. Anything that happened, it didn't matter what it was, whether it was political, economic, we would actually write these very quick synopsis of what had happened and what it meant for the Canadian dollar, what it's going to mean for the stock market. Those 4 years, Kim, basically formed the rest of my life in terms of this career, because it actually forced me to understand things at a very, very fast pace and to be able to communicate that. So that was my bridge. And then from there, like you said, going to a place like ABN AMRO, working for Scotia Bank on the trading desk, and then leaving all that behind to come here to work with retail clients.
Okay, so I have so many questions. I always know that around this time, I'm getting like, oh my gosh, I'm going to run out of time. But so my first question is, where do you in the morning or throughout the day read all of these forecasts to make your analysts to analyze, to come up with your reports?
Well, like most of us now, Kim, we draw our inputs from multiple sources. So, for example, I have something called Bloomberg. Now, people may be aware of Bloomberg. Michael Bloomberg. I'm sure a lot of people on this call will know who Michael Bloomberg is. Basically, started the company Bloomberg, which was at the time, again back in the late 1980s, one of the few companies that did kind of what I was talking about earlier, provided this insight into the financial markets for traders, for portfolio managers. And I've had that tool on my desk since the late 1980s, 1991. And I use it now. It's in the backdrop of the shot right now this morning. So this is at home with me. It's at work. It's on my phone. So that's one of the key places where I get a lot of my information from and my analytics. But we draw it from other people, and there's so many professionals in this business right now, Kim, that you listen to them too, because no one has the crystal ball. As much as everyone thinks I've got the crystal ball, and they don't. Nobody on the planet knows what is going to happen this afternoon, what black swan event is going to take place, what COVID-19 trajectory we're going to be on. So you do look to others. You listen to others and hear what their views are, and reflect on the views. And I think that's the only way you can do this.
Explain to me then, you've moved into the retail side of it, which I guess that means you work with people who have some money that they want to they want to build that money, which I guess means profits off of stocks and bonds sales. Explain to me how people who have money invested build wealth, make money.
Well, the first thing, Kim, I mean, most of the people that we deal with in Peterborough and in fact across Canada that have built up wealth over their lifetime. So the median age of our clients are around 62. So we cater to an older audience, those individuals that have built wealth. The building of the wealth at the end of the day, it does take into account what have they invested in over the years, but it really is how much have they saved, how much have they worked, how much have they, whether they're a business owner or an employee, a teacher, an engineer, it doesn't matter. How much have they saved over their lifetime and turn that savings into wealth so the wealth can help them through the retirement years? And then they get to that stage where, yes, they do start investing it in stocks and bonds. And then they get to a phase, Kim, where it's really about how do I protect this wealth? I've grown it. I'm now retired. I've sold my business, and I have to live on this wealth. And the world is crazy, and there's things happening every day that didn't happen 30 years ago. Although, I caution people, 30 years ago, things were happening back then, Kim, that we thought were crazy, right? So I guarantee every single year of our existence on this planet, from a financial point of view or an economic point of view, will seem crazy and different. And I can't understand how anyone will ever be the same again. But those individuals had to live through those years, and now they're going to live through it, and they're going to protect their wealth, and they're going to live on their wealth. And probably, Kim, they're going to take that wealth and they're going to pass it to the next generation. And then that's effectively what we do, is trying to take that wealth with that family all the way through to the next generation. It's like a baton race around a track.
And in a day, then, is it you and Ali and the folks at Pyle Wealth Management? Are you trading stocks and bonds based on information you're reading? Is it as simple as that, or is that not at all what happens to help build wealth?
No, that's part of it, Kim. I think, when we look at it, because I know the view of what, advisors do, or maybe what portfolio managers do, is that we do exactly that. We come in the morning at 8 o'clock, we look at the world, and we push a whole bunch of buttons, and we're buying and selling and buying and selling until 4 o'clock. And then we turn the computer off, we go home, and we have dinner. For some portfolio managers at big firms, that's maybe what they do. For us, it's really not that big of a part of the day. Most of the day is really spent talking to people and guiding them through what's going on. Someone picks up the phone and says, "I've decided, Andrew, to retire next week. Can I do that?" That has nothing to do with trading in the market, buying and selling stocks. So the portfolio part of what we do is important. And there are some days that, yeah, we are buying and selling things, but it's definitely not every single day. We spend more time on the financial planning side of the business than we do just kind of trading. And I know that's going to sound odd, because I know there's a lot of people probably on this call today, Kim, that are what we call day traders. In other words, they sit at home and they they want to play in the market, right? And then that's absolutely fine. But what we've always told people at the end of the day, and I find it's more for the retired. So I mean, this is a very interesting psychological thing that you pick up in this business, Kim. During your formative years where you're working, you really don't have time to play around the market. You've got a career, whatever that career is. You're busy. You're busy with kids. You're building a home. But all of a sudden, people get a little bit older. They're retired. They've got a lot of time on their hands, and all of a sudden, they want to become stockbrokers. And so we've come across this many, many times, and that's perfectly fine, right? For some people, it's a buzz, and we always say to them, look, have fun in the market. Just don't do it with everything that you own, because that's going to carry you through to the next stage. But it's interesting how people transition in their life with respect to how they see their wealth.
The day trader thing feels like it emerged about 20 years ago. Is it with the like, did something change where people could start to do that?
Well, exactly, Kim. So what changed? It was really the advent of the internet, and it's interesting, Kim. If you go back to the mid 1990s, which really was kind of the birth of the internet, and look at the late 1990s. So the birth of the internet really transitioned into this view that the internet was everything. Now, we're saying that today because most of us, we're having a Zoom meeting right now. So the internet has become everything for us today, right, Kim? But back then, the view was this is such an amazing technology, and not a lot of people even knew where we were going to go with the internet. What did it mean? What applications would we see 20 years, 30 years down the road? But a lot of companies popped up out of this and created a frenzy of attention amongst retail investors that, I've got to buy this penny stock because it's going to go from 5 cents a share to $1. And some people on this call will remember the tech bubble bust of 2000. So it was one of the bigger stock market corrections in the last several decades. Really came out of the advent of the internet, and then how companies emerged that were going to be these tech giants, some of which are. So Amazon wasn't a $2,000 stock back then, Kim. Google wasn't. A lot of these companies didn't make money. So I just find it's interesting how what got people into it was really the juxtapositioning of both. We gave people the tools to see through the internet, and then we gave them companies in the technology sector that they could buy now online. Some were successful, some were not successful, and that's the same story today. Day trading is not a guaranteed source of income for anybody.
Yeah. So I'm thinking about things like, is it 1989 was the Black Friday? Was that the bad one? Then I'm thinking about 2008. I'm thinking about the burst of the tech bubble, and now I'm thinking about COVID. When you tell me about which of all of the bad ones in your 30+ year career still leaves you shaken, or I'm interested in those dark times.
Yeah, I mean, when we look back at 87 and 89, so those were kind of stock market crashes that really, at the end of the day, weren't part of an overall economic calamity, Kim. So these were market calamities that, I'm not downplaying how important they were to individuals who had to look at their portfolios drop. But when I look back at situations, I go back to the early 80s when Canada had a double dip recession. Going back to the tech bubble when that stock market correction lasted from 2000 to 2002. And of course, in the middle of that, Kim, what did we have? We had 9/11. To me, that was a more worrisome kind of period in time. The financial crisis too was a crisis, and a lot of people lost jobs. But here at home, Kim, in Canada, we did a lot better than a lot of other countries in the world. And many of the people that I meet and talk to every day, they look at it from the portfolio point of view. My portfolio dropped a lot in 2008, 2009, but I didn't lose my job. I think I was still spending the same way. My house price might have gone down a little bit, but it wasn't down like 30% in the States. And so a lot of Canadians, believe it or not, can look back to the financial crisis and don't really think of it as an economic calamity. What we're dealing with today, and the history books are not, the ink's not dry yet. I mean, we're not out of this. And I'm not saying that to be gloomy this morning, but the COVID-19 experience, we're still in that. We're still in it from a pandemic point of view. And we're going to be in it from an economic point of view, even when we get a vaccine, because a lot of us, a lot of Canadians will have been permanently affected. And this is going to, bear watching for probably another year to 2 years, so we can look back and say, how did we get through that? How did people respond to it? How badly shaken were people now versus those other periods that you talked about, Kim?
Right. Do you think, I mean, you don't have a crystal ball. Do you think when you look back, when you're an old man in like 40 years, that this will be the worst one? What do you think? Or do you think it'll be like there's just a continuum of ups and downs?
I think that'll be 4 years from now, Kim, the way we're going now. So the next Zoom call, I might be all gray. But I think the way we'll look back at this, because right now we're dealing with something that is right in front of our face. It's a health crisis, right? The fact that we wear a mask when we go shopping, we keep distance. We're very much focused on what's right in front of us now, which is health. We talk about the economic effects. We talk about, a person that we know has been out of work now for 4 months, worried that they're going to run out of their CERB money, right? So we hear the personal things, but for all of us, I think as a community, it's all still very much health related. What you're talking about now is what happens once we get out of the health phase of this. We don't have a mask on anymore. We don't have to social distance, and we hope that happens soon. And I have a lot of people that stop me and say, I can't wait for that day when we have the vaccine, because the economy will be on the mend, the markets will go up, and everything will be great, right? And they think back to the financial crisis, Kim, because after the financial crisis, believe it or not, I know it seems like it was yesterday, the US economy grew for 10 to 11 years, and Canada's economy grew. Like, we had a very, very long spell of uninterrupted growth, markets going up. I know there were hiccups along the way. And my concern is a lot of people are going to look at this and say, as long as we get that vaccine, as long as we don't have to social distance and everything turns back to normal, we get to do that again. And what I caution them is some of the economic lessons we learned decades ago, that we're running up a lot of debt. People are running up a lot of debt. Governments are running up debt. Businesses are. Interest rates are not always going to be zero. And inflation's not always going to be tame. And my concern for people is that 5 to 10 years from now, we might be living another economic lesson, Kim, that has nothing to do with, putting a mask on. It's about things that we learned in the textbooks 30 years ago. So we just try to keep people reminded. Again, it's not about being gloomy. It's just saying, just be careful, be cautious. This is wealth. This is the money that you need to live on in your retirement. Don't get complacent just because we've managed to get a vaccine. We will all celebrate, I guarantee, when that happens, and we don't have to wear a mask in. But that doesn't necessarily mean it's the end of the story related to the pandemic.
I have just as a side question on that. Do you have a lot of your clients calling you and saying, I want to buy Moderna stock, I want to buy this stock, that stock?
We do. I mean, it wasn't that long ago that we had clients asking about whether they should be buying pot stocks, Kim.
Right.
And that didn't turn out great for some people. I mean, it turned out great for some.
Yeah.
We don't have a lot of clients do that. I mean, we as a portfolio group, we've always had exposure to healthcare. So a lot of our clients own those companies within baskets of healthcare stocks. So healthcare is one of those sectors that is always going to have long-term growth. Sadly, Kim, we're not sadly. I mean, we're all going to we're going to get to older ages than our parents did. That's the good news. The bad news is, as we live longer, there's a higher probability that we're going to get sick. So healthcare as an industry, for those that are looking to invest, is probably going to be a long-term growth industry for the foreseeable future, just because there will be so much demand, as there is now, for a vaccine. 10 years from now, there'll be a demand for some other type of remedies, some other type of vaccine. So we get clients that play around in that, but most of our clients are still fixated on what is happening to them, what's happening to their neighbors or kids. And again, like I said before, Kim, we're just looking at health right now, right? And we have no choice but to keep focusing on health, especially with what's happening south of the border.
Yeah. It was interesting. I'm curious, like March, I feel like was so dark and scary. And I'm power of attorney for my parents for their finances. And and I don't have a lot of money invested, but I have a lot of money invested for them. And I eventually, once I got out of quarantine at the end of March, I had to call their financial advisor and just say, so like, how much did my parents' money lose? And it was a shocking amount. I'm curious what March was like for you.
March was, and I hate using the word chaos, Kim, because I think the word gets overplayed. But March was pretty much as chaotic as you get. It was the fastest bear market in living memory. I mean, we saw stock markets drop 35% in a month. Now, to put that in perspective, back in 2008, 2009, Kim, we had a 50% drop in the stock market, which was massive. And a lot of people lost a lot of money. So people that were in your parents' shoes, Kim, went through some traumatic experiences back in 2008, 2009. But it happened over the course of a year. We didn't push that 50% into a few weeks, which is basically what we did this time. Now, the good news is we didn't lose 50% of the market. But there was a lot of panic sellers out there. And I think the difference is we were dealing with something, Kim, that was not economic. This wasn't a housing crisis. This wasn't a bank failure in the States or a geopolitical issue in Asia. This was something that most of us from a economic point of view and market point of view had never dealt with before, a pandemic that had hit the shores of Canada. And now we had a shutdown, which we had never done before. We've never shut the economy down. This is a recession, but recessions usually happen. They don't get forced. And I think that's what created the chaos in March, until we knew that governments and central banks, Kim, would come to the aid of the economy, whether it was Canada or the States or Europe, and provide a backstop. But there was a period of time, Kim, in March where we didn't know that. Some of us predicted it. Some of us thought, well, they have to, like, why isn't the government here? But until it actually happened, there was a lot of people sitting at home, Kim, that were watching the TV and just watching the markets fall with no lifeline. And so I think that's where a lot of that panic came from, is just the unknown and the uncertainty.
Tell me about debt. I know, I understand personal debt, but I'm curious about deficits in countries and deficits and why that's so dangerous, because it feels sort of, I don't know, like in the air or ephemeral to me. Like, what does it matter if we keep putting more debt on? Tell me about what the concern is from an economics point of view, and how it affects me personally.
Well, there's a very, very important debate going on now. And Kim, I'll argue this debate will go on for years and years. And that is, should governments have spent the money that they spent during this pandemic to keep people afloat? Almost everyone that I talk to, including myself, agrees that governments had I would say probably the primary role in providing a safety net during this unprecedented time. And that is, providing income to people that would not have income, helping businesses out that we wanted to keep people on the payrolls. So I don't think there's a lot of debate about whether we should have. I think the debate now becomes how much more do we do? And thinking about what are the potential costs down the road. So a lot of the people that are watching this now would have heard last week that there's going to be roughly a $340 billion deficit for Canada, which is 16% of the economy, and it's massive. And like a lot of my clients, Kim, they say, I don't understand when you talk about billions and trillions. My eyes glaze over because I just don't get it. 343 billion is a massive number. And that number gets tacked on to the amount that the country owes. Today, Kim, what does that mean for us? It probably means for a lot of the people, I'm still eating, I'm still paying the rent, I'm surviving this pandemic. In other words, they're all good things. These things have all meant good things for me today. Down the road, if interest rates start to go up and the cost of that debt to the government goes up, what does that mean for us? Well, it could mean a number of things, Kim. It could mean that the government now no longer has a lot of flexibility in what it can spend in. So if we're looking to the government for programs to support the elderly, support healthcare, education, that debt or the interest cost of that debt may mean that they have less wiggle room. So that would affect us. I know a lot of people watching this morning are going to say, well, what about taxes? And I think that's probably going to be the key thing, is that years down the road, we may inevitably see taxes go up in order to pay for this. So the thing I've always, it was drilled into my head in university, Kim, and I drilled it into my kids' heads and clients I deal with. At some point, someone has to pay for it. And I think those are things that we prepare for down the road. We don't really think about them today, and I know a lot of people aren't. It's let's get through the pandemic. But there are definitely things that we're going to have to think about as business owners, individuals, even back to your parents' example, Kim, how does that wealth get taxed down the road? What is their income tax situation 10 years from now? Will become important for them as it will be for the 20-somethings that are now getting into the job market.
Right. And are there countries in the world that don't carry debt? I mean, like Western functioning companies or countries that are similar to Canada that don't carry debt? And would you say a country would be in its best position if it had no deficit?
I wouldn't say that. And to answer your first question, Kim, there's no Western democracy or Western country or major power for that that has no debt. Every country that you look at on the map in the G7, the G10 have debt. Japan has a massive amount of debt. China has a massive amount of debt. The States does. In its purest form, Kim, there's nothing wrong with running a deficit if the economy needs it. If we need to provide support to an economy, most economists, including myself, would agree deficit spending is fine. Where we get into problems is when that debt level goes up. So the key thing in that question, Kim, that you just asked is, are there countries that don't have debt? And the answer really is no. The problem is a lot of countries in the world have a lot of debt and are building on that debt. And we may not think about Japan, we may not worry about what Germany's doing or the United Kingdom or Italy, or maybe we don't even worry about what the States is doing. But at some point in time, if you look at the demographics of the world, we have an aging population. We're gonna have more older people, less younger people. What does that mean for finance? It means that there's gonna be more of us, Kim, that are gonna look for support. We're gonna need services in our elderly years. We're gonna need healthcare. And unfortunately, there's gonna be less people behind us paying in tax dollars to provide that. So the world, and this was the case before the pandemic, this has nothing to do with COVID-19. This trajectory has been here for years, and it's something that we really can't change. The world is getting older. And down the road, the concern I've got, Kim, is that there's going to be so many more people going to the trough looking for money because we need it, because our deficits are big, and less money going in into the pot. And I think that's something, again, it's not for today's conversation, Kim. It's not going to make interest rates go up today. 10 years from now, we may be looking at interest rates going up just because that's where they have to go, because there's less savers and there's more people now drawing on the pot.
Right. I just want to completely switch gears for a second, and then I have a couple more questions. I've got about 5 more minutes before I want to go to questions. In 2008, I'm kind of obsessed with Ponzi schemes and people like Bernie Madoff. You would have known who he was, I assume, because he was such a big fish. Or did you know who he was? And did you have is there ever a sense that you're like, something doesn't make sense with that financial planner, or something's hinky? Like, do you ever get a sense of those things?
No, absolutely, Kim. I mean, Bernie Madoff, there have been many scams, many Ponzi schemes, and we've seen them even in the Peterborough area. Bernie was just massive. So tens and tens and tens of billions of dollars, which is why he grabbed the headlines. But there were so many more people that were doing the same thing at a smaller level. And, sometimes we heard about it in the news, maybe in Canada. Sometimes we heard it, word of mouth, talking to somebody at the school, like, oh, this person caused this to happen. But at the end of the day, I mean, and I hate to say this, Kim, but I mean, there's always going to be good fish and bad fish in the pool. And, as individuals began investing more, as financial products began to really expand, so the complexity. So, in the 50s, what did you do? Well, you bought a stock, or maybe you bought a bond. I mean, I don't know, Kim, if you remember, your parents buying Canada savings bonds for you and, going to the bank and clipping those little colorful coupons, right? And as kids, we didn't know what the heck they were doing, but, that was to help us. we've now gone from that to, there's various types of investment products, and with it, more complicated products. And as things get more complicated, it's easier to pull the wool over people's eyes. And so we saw that develop. We saw it with Bernie Madoff. The industry's done some very good things, Kim, right? The industry has made the rules tighter and tighter and tighter and tighter. And every single year, the rules get tighter to protect people from people like Bernie Madoff. In my career at Scotia McLeod, like dealing with retail people, I've gone out to homes and discussed their finances, and I ran into a dentist, and this story, I've told Ali many times, but we always think of dentists, medical professionals, being extremely intelligent people, right, in all facets of life, obviously in terms of what they do, but they're very, very intelligent people. You should not be able to pull the wool over someone's eyes if they've got a university degree. I sat with this dentist and talked to him about his current finances. He said, well, I've got X amount of dollars in this portfolio, and it always makes 10% every year, and even during 2008, 2009. And of course, as soon as he said that, I thought, well, hold on, that doesn't make sense. Even if it was a good portfolio, it probably lost a little bit. And so I asked him for a statement, and this is where the link to Bernie comes in. And so he brought out the statement. The statement was a newsletter. It was a 8.5 by 11 sheet of paper with stuff that, I write every Friday a newsletter, Kim, as you know, and we put it out and I talk about the world. And that's what this was. It was just kind of a newsletter about, and it had a number at the top, which was his balance. That was his statement. And I said, well, how do you know you actually have the money there? And he says, oh, I don't. Anyway, long story short, he didn't become a client, but I did touch base with him 2 years later, and the money was gone. Money. So it doesn't matter, the protection of people, I find, is everyone. Like we think about the people that don't have a high degree of education, especially in finance. We need to protect them from people that could take advantage of them. But even all the way up to the top where people are educated, Kim, this can still go on. So yeah, I think Bernie Madoff did a lot of bad things. The good thing that Bernie Madoff did at the end of the day was basically force regulators to take this seriously in terms of making advisors like me accountable to the people. And I think that was a good development, and it happens every day.
What's so interesting to me is how much trust people have to have in you, in the same way they would with their surgeon, because your highly technical expertise we don't have. So if I had $1 million and I gave it to you, I would have to trust that you were doing good with it. I was curious, Andrew, I was looking at your resume getting ready for this. You have like a series of letters behind your name. So I get as far as MA, which means you have your master's, I think. Then so CFP, CIM, FMA, FCSI. Can you tell me quickly what some of your other letters are, what they mean?
Well, the CFP is actually, when I look at, I call it the alphabet soup business card, Kim. So a lot of these are designations that you naturally will achieve as you become a financial advisor, because you do a number of courses that are required. And a lot of those courses will get you designations, financial management analysts. CFP is certified financial planner, which really is not on the investment side. It's really a very important designation. A lot of hard work goes into it in terms of creating a financial planner, like sitting with someone and actually charting the course for their financial future. To me, the MA and the CFP on my business card are probably the two things I would want anyone to look at. The other ones are designations that we pick up there. I don't want to downplay them, Kim. I mean, every ounce of education that we get. And one of the key things about this business is that we have things called continuing education, which a lot of other people have as well. Every year, we're required to have 30 hours of continued education in all those fields that are related to what we do as financial advisors. And it could be investments, it could be planning, estates, taxation, anything like that. So some of those go into those designations, but they're on the card. But I always tell people, to your point, Kim, this is a trust business. It's not about I'm going to take the person with the most number of letters on their card. And I've often said to people, many Canadians will spend more time researching what their next vehicle purchase will be than researching who their next financial advisor will be, right? And they'll agonize over the car purchase for 6 months. They will go through reams of dealerships and websites. They'll bump into someone one day and say, I'm a financial advisor, you've got $1 million, give it to me and I'll make you money. And off it goes. So, I've always told people spend at least as much time, if not more, on picking the partners that you have. And that would apply to being an accountant too, Kim, or, who's your lawyer. Spend at least as much time on those decisions as you would buying your next pickup truck.
I have two more questions, and then we'll go to questions from people who are watching. So my first one is, you work with your daughter, Alexandra Pyle. So tell me how that comes about, and tell me what that is like to work professionally with your child.
Well, to answer your last question, Kim, it's absolutely amazing. So Ali and I have this fantastic relationship where, we're business partners at the end of the day. We co-manage people, but we're also father and daughter at the office, and we're also best buddies. So we have this nice seamless transition between the various relationships that the two of us have. Where it came about, I mean, Ali, again, think back to what I said earlier in our conversation. The kids would say, "What do you do?" And I would say, "I tell stories and I do this." But neither of my two daughters ever wanted to get into what I did. They couldn't see why I'd want to sit in an office, look at screens, talk about the economy. And Ali was one, Ali said the same thing. Ali originally went for nursing at Trent. And similar to me, it was, this was not going to be my profession, but she happened to take an economics course. And I found what was really curious is that all of a sudden she came home one day and said, "Oh, I took economics. I really like it." And I said, "Well, take more." So Ali went on to get her, her 4-year honors degree at Trent in economics. And I tried to encourage her, "Well, go for your master's degree or go for your MBA." Ali's been working at Scotiabank now for well over a decade. So she started as a part-time teller, worked her way through university, and then gets an economics degree. And I said, "Well, why don't you go down to Toronto, go to head office and do what I did." The thing is, Ali loves Peterborough so much. She loves the community, did not want to leave, definitely does not like the big city. And so she had a choice, and the choice was, continue working at a bank branch, which is perfectly fine. But eventually, I think she grew out of that and wanted to do something different. And then we had the real chat, like, "Dad, what is it that you really do?" And I told her, and I said, "This is not about selling products. We're not doing mortgages or anything like that. This is about helping people and sitting and advising and listening and managing their money. But you're going to be everything. You're going to feel their heartaches. You're going to go to funerals. You're going to cheer with them when their daughter graduates." And Ali made up her mind. And so the two of us have been together for now, we're 4 years, and she's now kind of, it's funny, Kim, when I first started in this business back in 2007, at the ripe old age of like 43, people would say to me like, "Well, what's going to happen when you retire? Like, what happens to my money?" And I'm like, "Well, what are you talking about? I'm only 43." Like, and she's, "No, seriously, because our last advisor retired and we didn't have anybody." And I used to just fluff it off and say, "Well, don't worry about it. I'm young." But, I'm 57 now, Kim, so I'm a little bit older. The grays are coming in, and I do still get those questions. And now the answer is simple. I just say, "Well, I've got a business team now, and I've got my daughter, and she's the succession plan. So you don't have to worry about what happens when I retire. She will continue it." And so that part has been a huge relief for me.
That's awesome. Is it hard for you to relinquish any control, or is that something you're actually good at?
No, I like it. I mean, and it's an interesting relationship. It's not about butting heads. Like, I've given Ali the opportunity to grow within the team. Ali's the first to point out when I make a mistake or tell me where I can improve things, which is fantastic. And so I think, when I look forward to my retirement, Kim, like, what do I do when I'm not doing this? And I don't know when that date is. I joke with clients that it's probably when Ali pushes me out of the branch on a wheelchair because she's tired of seeing me come in every day. Um, but when that day happens, I think it'll be a natural handoff, and that she's already taken over most of what we do, and we work collaboratively. I'm looking forward to that day when I can just sit here at home and write books and do some fun things like that.
I have to say, we'll go to Lindy and see what the questions are, but I have to say that the reason I really wanted you to do this with me, and of course you're so amazing, is that I think it was around April 9th, you did one of these on a Friday morning for the innovation cluster. You had you had a really beautiful PowerPoint, but that was all great. But what I was struck by is how calm you are. I mean, you have an amazing speaking voice, obviously, and presence, but you're very calm and rational when you talk about this. So you seem kind of unflappable, which seems like the kind of person I would want to listen to your advice around money. Have you always been like that? Is this kind of what I see now? That's you?
It's taken, I've been doing this for over 30 years now, Kim. So, I don't think any of us come out of school and say, hey, I've mastered the art of whatever. So the art of talking to people but going back to those formative years on Bay Street and some of the jobs that I had before I became an advisor, it was really about how do you take the insanity of the world and try to put it in terms that everyone will understand. And it's not the same as dumbing it down, because dumbing it down I always find means I'm going to miss things. I'm going to leave things out that could be important to the listener. But it was really taking things and putting it in a way that people could understand. And that took years, Kim, to develop. And you get to a stage where you can tell people exactly what's happening in the world without having to use fancy jargon. I've always said this business, you could make it as complicated as you want. And some people like Bernie Madoff did that, and we saw what happened. Or you can make it as simple as you can. And to me, I've always gone the latter route.
Well, I'm certainly appreciative of it. I know I don't have very much more time with you. Lindy, I'm going to ask you for some questions for our incredible guest.
Great, thank you. Yes, we have a few here. So first question for you, Andrew, is you spoke about the difficult economic effects of the pandemic. Your job must involve some crisis counseling with people in distress about their finances. How do you navigate this in your professional life?
It is, and counseling, is a key part of what we do, and it's not always about the finances. It could be all the different facets of the family. What we've always done, and again, I don't want to make this sound too simple, but we've always stressed with people that you have a portfolio, you have an investment account, which is important. But the other thing that you have to have, or you should have, is a comprehensive financial plan. And this is why we do this every single day with clients. Every client gets one. And the reason why I say that is because if you've got a financial plan that is grounded on reasonable assumptions, not pie in the sky forecasts, and if you've got a portfolio that matches that, in other words, you're not taking too much risk, you're taking just the right amount of risk that you need for retirement savings, or maybe you're in your 70s and this is money that you're already using for your retirement, that financial plan is invaluable in times like the pandemic, because now instead of sitting on the phone with someone and saying, don't worry about it, which I'm sure a lot of advisors say, but I'm sure people come off that phone call and say, I know he's telling me not to worry about it, but how do I know I shouldn't worry about it? The plan allows us to kind of sit down with the person and say, even with this shock, and the portfolio's gone down X percent, whatever, you're still going to live out what you want to do, because we didn't take extreme levels of risk. In other words, you weren't overly exposed. Only with a financial plan could you actually have that substantive talk with the client where A, they don't have to worry, but B, you can show them a document as to why they shouldn't worry.
Great. And this question starts off with a comment. I've learned so much. And they ask, Andrew, what is your work-life balance like?
Well, work-life balance, I mean, for all of us, I think in the last few months has obviously shifted. I've talked to a lot of people that love the fact that they get to work from home more. So I'm obviously doing this interview from home. Work-life balance has improved dramatically in the last few years. And that's not just because I've got a wonderful daughter on the team and we both co-manage the business. But we've always taken time out for health, for fitness. So I go to the gym regularly. My wife and I will sit on the rocks and we'll have chats. So I mean, work-life balance is important. It's a little different now. And so maybe there's more life balance and work for some people. I had a chat with someone the other day who said he played golf with these two gentlemen that are working from home, but they're working on the golf course every day. So, I mean, I guess some people have extrapolated work-life balance. But no, I love my life in the office and I love my life at home. And to me, I don't think I've ever had a better work-life balance.
Great. And just one last question here for you, Andrew, is what is one piece of financial advice that you think is most important?
Well, I think the most important piece of advice, and it goes back to a lot of the things that Kim and I were talking about going forward, and that is always make sure that you're not in an over leveraged position. Make sure that you do not have too much debt on board. So some debt is good, and mortgages and things like that. But I think the number one piece of advice is ensure that you don't have too much debt, and ensure that you're always savings. But you'll find that the two of those go hand in hand. Whether I'm talking to a 21-year-old or if I'm talking to someone in their 40s and 50s, that piece of advice is going to become more important, I guarantee, in the next 5 to 10 years than it has in the last 5 years.
Great. Can I jump in and ask, just before I let you go, I've been thinking about with the loss of pensions. I mean, so many people, my father-in-law, God rest his soul, but my dad has GE pensions. So many people had pensions. That will not be the reality for our generation, with the exception of some people, I guess, government pensions and teachers. Has your business changed as the pension thing? Like, is it like financial planning had to come up here as pensions went down here, or are they not connected at all?
No, they're very much connected, Kim. So as the country has moved away from defined benefit plans, which is kind of what we're talking about, and towards defined contribution plans where the employee is contributing to a pool of money, just like us, we would contribute to our RSPs. So the population now, Kim, shoulders more of the responsibility, more of the burden for their own personal pension than they ever have. So that naturally means, as you talked about earlier, I've got to find somebody that can help me with this, and that's helped the industry. But it's also forced advisors to really look at this through the lens of this is a person's pension. It's not just it's just not an investment statement anymore. This is a person's pension. And that could mean a small business owner, Kim. That could be someone who says, I'm selling my furniture business. Someone gave me $1 million for my business, and now I'm not working. That $1 million is their pension. And so the management of that pension, really the importance of that has gone up dramatically. And the other problem with it, Kim, the last point I'll make, is that over the last 30 years, pensions or RSPs have enjoyed probably one of the best periods of time in terms of investing in known memory. Interest rates went down. China was growing at 10% a year. Stock markets were going up 10% a year. And a lot of people made a lot of money in that period of time and have a lot of wealth, and that's wonderful. The generations we talk to now, Kim, if we look over the next 30 years, my concern is that we won't have that same benefit. Interest rates probably will have to go up. China is not going to grow at 10% per year. And so getting back to that, now I own my pension, it's going to be hard for a lot of people to manage through these times when this is their nest egg. So it's created a lot of change in the industry and a lot more demand on people like myself to try to steer people the right way with now their own pensions.
Andrew, thank you so much for taking the time. I know how busy you are, and for also being so fascinating and breaking it down in a manageable way for us all. I'm so grateful you could join me this morning. Thank you.
Okay, my pleasure, anytime.
Okay, bye everyone. We'll see you soon. Come to the farm.